Gosh.
Right, Anna, dogs in the heat.
Yes.
So, oh my gosh, as I say, Anna and I, for 14 years, have talked about when the temperatures go up. Anna has wonderful statistics about this because you always say, Anna, in fact, we're going to be speaking to Dr. Dan O'Neill about this in a moment, who's an associate professor from the Royal Veterinary College. But this is one statistic that you always give out, and I hope I get it right. How long does it take for a car to heat up?
A dog can die in a car, even in the shade on a hot day, in about 5 minutes because their body temperature is hotter than ours already. And of course, they're wearing a coat and so on. And it's the greenhouse effect that happens. And
that's terrifying. So when you think I'll just pop to the shops, I'm parked under the trees, it's 5 minutes is too long.
Absolutely. You can't risk it. You cannot risk it. And this is why, if people see a dog in a car, people will smash the windows. And quite right, really. But it really shouldn't happen and because it's in the news every single year. But this is why I suppose, it's worth talking about. Even on a day like today, it was cloudy, but I do still believe that it was too hot today.
Well, cars are like saucepans.
Exactly.
They hold their heat. Even with the windows open, they hold their heat. They're a metal box, basically.
Yes, exactly.
Well, here to talk to us a lot more about this is Dr. Dan O'Neill, friend of the show, Associate Professor of the Royal Veterinary College. Hello, Dan.
I was going to say good afternoon. It's evening now, or almost night.
It's really late, Dan, and we're very grateful for you staying up. What type of dogs are at risk, or would you say they all are, of heat stroke?
Do you know what? That's an absolutely wonderful question. Essentially, every dog is at risk. Because it kind of comes down to what are the reasons why they might get heat stroke or heat-related illness in the first place. The key message is that there is a huge hand of humans in causing this. So we have intrinsic factors in some dogs. So if we select dogs with no noses, so we choose to own a flat-faced dog like a French Bulldog or a Pug, those dogs have a hugely increased risk of heat stroke, purely because we have chosen to have a dog where they haven't got the key attribute for cooling themselves down, which is breathing air through their nose and cooling themselves down. So there are many different factors. The second thing is the external triggers. So you had said there about cars. So it really doesn't matter. Any dog left in a car, as you say, for 5 minutes, can overheat. Once you get dogs with severe overheating, Vet Compass research at the RVC has shown 50% of them will die, the ones that get severe heat stroke. So this is really important. We've got a whole team working at the Royal Veterinary College, Emily Hall, Jude Bradbury, Shan Beard, Dominic Barfield, Anne Carter, a whole team working on it, doing a PhD and master's projects. This is such a huge problem. And it's getting worse, also down to the hand of man because the climate is changing.
Yeah, of course.
So it's getting hotter and hotter.
It is, Dr. Dan. I mean, it so is. And I know we might not think so at the moment, but earlier this week it was very hot. But how can owners make practical decisions about managing their dog's health in hotter temperatures, like changing their routine to exercise their dogs early in the morning, for example, and late at night?
Perfect question, because that's really what it all comes down to. What can we do? So essentially the moral here is prevention is better than cure, and maybe we mention what you do in both. So first of all, prevention. That means Vet Compass research has shown that yes, cars are a huge issue, but actually when you look at dogs that get heat stroke, only 5% of them are related to being kept in cars. Almost 75%, so 3/4 of all the dogs in the UK that get heat stroke, heat-related illness, is because of exercise. And these are especially the flat-faced dogs or dogs with very thick coats or older dogs, obese dogs. So owners can control that. They can avoid exercise on the parts of the day that are very hot. A recent paper we had out showed that we can rely on the Met Office heat alerts. Those heat alerts show an absolutely huge spike in dog heat-related illness when the heat alerts go off. So this is prevention, right? And we can help to reduce the risk in the first place. Then we have the issue of when they get heat-related illness, which was the second part of your question. And the key message there, if and this could be your mantra for the rest of this show, the key message is wet then vet. A lot of owners panic, and the first thing they do is they pop the dog in a car, drag it, carry it into a car, transport it to a vet. Actually, all you're doing is allowing the heat to stay in the dog longer, and in fact you're putting them into a car, which might make it worse. So the key thing is cool first. So wet the dog. That means just drenching the dog in water, any temperature. There was an old myth that you could only use tepid water. Well, that's been bust by Vet Compass research. Just wet the dog, pour water over the dog, avoiding its face so you don't risk inhalation. Wet the dog, cool the dog down, then contact your vet and take the dog there.
What are the signs? Because I know I've got a flat-faced dog, and I get very worried. I live in a tiny flat in London where I have no air conditioning, and if I'm out, I know now I can leave a fan on, but I'm always worried leaving anything with electric on. Anyway, in a flat, but I leave the curtains drawn, but I always think, what can I do to make sure, even though the windows are open, I try not to let the sun in whilst I'm out? And this is for many people who are out and their dogs are left for a couple of hours. What can you do? There are these cooling mats, Dan, but my bulldog started to eat the mat, and I'm sure it was full of toxic fluid. What would you say if you've got to go out the house and you don't want them to overheat? What advice would you give?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because there's lots of the coolie mats, and if the dogs lie on them and don't eat them, they can be helpful. There's also jackets you can get that you can have in the fridge or freezer or wet. There's some research to show often they may make things worse, because once they dry out, they just act to almost put another layer around the dog, keeping the dog warm. There's this old myth about cooling dogs by putting wet towels over them. Again, just pour the water over them. You don't need the towels. A lot of the houses we have now, because energy is so expensive, there's super insulation and double glazing, and a lot of the houses now in the summer get horrendously hot. So you're absolutely right. Key things are, first of all, to think about it. A lot of people don't even think about their dogs overheating, so you're already ahead of the game here. Leaving windows open, putting fans on, using air conditioning. Actually, sometimes, despite the energy cost, we have to do it. Allowing the dogs access, if you have a garden, allowing dogs access to paddling pools. Wetting dogs, just spraying them with a hose. Giving them cold drinks. You can put ice cubes into their water. A lot of this is essentially thinking about your dog as if it was a child.
Yeah.
So in other words, a human being, a biological entity that we have to take the responsibility of keeping cool.
Anna?
Yes, I was thinking the other day of investing, Dan, in a sprinkler, in the garden, one of those kind of wave-like hosepipe things. Do you think that might be a good idea for a dog to enjoy a sprinkler?
Yeah, and the dogs love it, and it's great fun for you. And if it's a lovely hot day, you will just see the dogs dancing and jumping through it. So those are really good ways of keeping your dog cool. You have to be a little bit careful on the times of day you're doing it, because dogs play, obviously, because they enjoy playing, but it's really enjoying playing with you. So the risk is, we have the sprinkler, you're out there, the dog is having a great time, it's 2:00 in the afternoon, and the dog will keep playing because it wants to spend time with you. And actually, you might only be encouraging the dog to over-exercise in the heat of the day.
Yes.
So beautiful idea, but use it earlier in the morning, later in the afternoon, and try not to encourage the dog to exercise too much during the really hot weather. If you think about it, we have dogs that live, street dogs, without the hand of man, that live in Greece or, really hot countries. They don't get heat-related illness because they're generally slim. They're not extreme breeds because they've regressed. They almost all look like pointers.
Yes, true.
They are not on the end of a lead where they're forced to go for a walk in the heat. Often I will see people 2:00 in the afternoon, really hot weather, standing chatting to their friends with this poor dog hopping from foot to foot where its feet are just being cooked by tarmac. So the street dogs don't get heat stroke. Our dogs do. It's because of almost the love we give them. We make them obese. We have dogs with thick coats. We have dogs with no muzzles. We have them on leads. We take them for walks thinking we're doing great things. But actually, everything we're doing is the hand of man making it worse for the dog.
True.
It's terrible in a way.
I'm sorry, Dan, we have to leave it there. Always, always interesting. to speak to you. Thank you very much indeed. And you're right, the street dogs, they will just lie in the shade, won't they? Away from it all.
Absolutely, they do. They just hide away. You don't see them. I've been to India and they go nowhere and they're all in the shade. You know what they say? Mad dogs and Englishmen stay out in the midday sun.
You're absolutely right. Right, we're going to